I'm Josh Cooperman, and this is Convo by Design. In this episode of the podcast, you're going to hear from designer Elisa Baran. Baran and her eponymous bicoastal firm are responsible for some interesting new looks. And by interesting, I mean that in a positive sense, in every sense of the word. She has a very unique perspective on materiality and the meaning of perfection in her work. Part of this includes application of wabi-sabi. She embraces it, and brutalism. She embraces it in her otherwise softer and muted work for what is truly a unique look. And I don't say that lightly, and one that I believe will gain traction as Elisa garners more attention, more followers, more press, more pub, more ink, of which this is part. Okay, I got excited there for a minute. But when you see her work, when you hear her talk, I think you will too. Anyway, before we get to my chat with Baran, it's time for another Book Look segment on the show featuring Homes by Bird, the art and architecture of Robert Bird and his son Gary. A new offering by Chris Lukather, showcasing the work of Robert Bird and his son Gary. As the title suggests, curious, have you ever heard of Robert Bird or his son Gary Bird? Probably not, unless you live in the San Fernando Valley in Southern California. This book is an amazing, fun trot down memory lane for people like me who grew up in Southern California and love architecture. Bird rose to prominence at a time when one could perform the work of an architect without actually being a licensed architect. For those of you who listened to the tragic story of 1001 North Roxbury, in that situation, not Bird, but Carlton L. Burgess designed a world-class home despite not being a licensed architect. I wonder if he had been licensed, if that might have dampened his creative approach to residential design. But first Bird, and then later work by his son Gary. Gary represented some of the most identifiable architecture of the Southern California landscape as it relates to the San Fernando Valley. The whimsical approach to residential design with flagstone patios, leaded glass windows, fun and fanciful brickwork, shingles and forever views of pools, canyons, yards, and open spaces, low-slung walls with rooflines that seemingly extended off cliffs, turret-like chimneys, all lend to the feeling of the San Fernando Valley from the perspective of a young Angelino with a passion for architecture and design. Talking about me for a second, in case you didn't know, I grew up in a home similar to this. And if you are not from LA, though Bird and his son Gary did work in other states, this is a Southern California design story. But the great part is, you don't need to be from LA to appreciate the Bird's work. And it's right here in this book from Lukather to view, peruse, learn, and enjoy. The book is called Homes by Bird, the art and architecture of Robert Bird and his son Gary. Check the show notes for a link to buy. And I hope you do, because books like this are important. This showcases architecture that, if you're not from the San Fernando Valley, if you're not from Southern California or didn't live in a Bird home, you may not have ever seen this, and it's very cool. And I love this, and I hope you get the book. Up next, my conversation with designer Elisa Baran, and if you're going to hear it right after this. I am incredibly proud of Convo by Design in year 10, and I'm equally proud of my partnership with Thermosol. They've been presenting partners of Convo by Design for 3 years now, and there is a certain amount of pride that comes with saying that the show is presented by the company that is the best in the world at what they do. Thermosol engineers the most exceptional smart shower products and steam shower systems worldwide for a few reasons. They were the first company to design, patent the technology here in the U.S. dating back to 1958. Thermosol, a U.S. brand, a U.S. manufacturer in Round Rock, Texas, employs an engineering team that designs, tests, and continuously refines the product. Their quality control team tests every single steam generator before it departs the factory. Who else does that? Nobody. I have had the pleasure of working with some world-class designers and architects who tell me, and you probably know this, that the idea of luxury has changed and continues to change, especially when clients want a spa-like bathroom.
steam is mandatory. Or it's just not considered a luxury space. And if you want to add steam, you have one true option. It's Thermosol. And now, Thermosol, the industry leader in steam, bath equipment, and technology since 1958, is enhancing their already stellar family of products with new indoor and outdoor luxury saunas. Available in 3 design configurations, each sauna is handcrafted from clear Western red cedar or Nordic spruce, inspired by the brilliance of Northern European sauna technology and design. A luxury bathroom isn't luxury without steam. If you want luxury, you have one option. It's Thermosol. Check them out at thermosol.com and at Thermosol on the socials.
One of the things that I have learned over time, and I really do love this, is that everyone's got a story. Everyone's story is different. As we get into the design work that you do, I think a lot of that is gonna come out of, background and backstory. Specifically, how'd you wind up doing what you're doing? How did you wind up in design? And specifically, what is the influence of brutalism, wabi-sabi, a muted color palette? This idea, you have a very, very distinct style in your design, which is in many ways different than a lot of the designers I speak to. What's the backstory?
Yeah, well, I didn't start in interior design. So I graduated from Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising in California. And I was in fashion PR for a while. So I always loved design, but it wasn't from an interiors perspective. It was always from fashion and doing something with my hands always made me very happy. So I had started at this fashion PR firm, launched a fashion line and jewelry line during this time while at school. And I did this for a couple of years. I was at the PR firm for 4 years and realized there was something missing. And I wanted to do a pivot. I wanted to have a pivot in my life. I just didn't know what it was. So my parents being in real estate, my mom in real estate was like, why don't you just get your real estate license? And I was like, well, everyone's got the real estate license. I guess it's a great thing to have in your back pocket. Why not? This time I was 22 years old. So I got my real estate license. And by showing clients homes and seeing all of these incredible properties in California, in Beverly Hills and Holmby Hills and West Hollywood, all of the iconic areas, I fell in love with design and architecture. So that's what made my initial pivot. And I flipped my first home in 2016 or 2017. And it did really well. And then that's when I just couldn't stop. I just loved interior design and just kept wanting to go and move forward with it.
So you got your license?
Yeah, I got my real estate license, started showing homes, selling homes to clients, both on the seller side and buyer side, but didn't love it. Kind of jumped forward to like the design part because I didn't really love the real estate.
What's really interesting about that is, and I think it's fascinating for me to sort of hear the story jumping from FITM to real estate into design, because I can see that path. That path makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. What's really interesting too is when you're doing real estate, you're seeing people at their best and sometimes at their worst, the manner in which they live. You're actually hearing real world conversations of people, like as they're walking through a house. You never get this from, correct me if I'm wrong, but you never really get this from a client where they're telling you what they want in their design. They'll show you the Pinterest pictures, they'll show you, the aspirational stuff, but they never really tell you what it is that they want. But when they're walking through a home, they'll tell you all the things that they hate and all the things that they really like. You really get this idea of what they're really looking for, don't you?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Comes from a very negative perspective when you're walking through a home, because it's really never anything positive. It's just, this is what I don't like. This is what I don't want. This is what I would fix. And I do believe that is to lower the price of the home. They say it obviously so that, they have a negotiation standpoint from there to be like, okay, well, this didn't have what we wanted. So now the seller can be like, okay, well, they didn't like this. So maybe they're going to try and, negotiate the price of it. So yeah, I do get I have a few clients that are very in on the design perspective. They love design and they want to tell me exactly what they want. But you're right. For the most part, it's with Pinterest and they're like, this is what I want. This is what I want it to look like.
What have you gleaned from that experience, and how does that inform how you deal with and work with new clients, specifically because you're a rarity. You have a very, very distinct design style of your own. It's one that you really seem to specialize in, which is not a common thing to do. Most designers that I have spoken to will say, I just want to be a blank page. I want the client to tell me what it is that they want. I can design to any style. And it's not that you can't, it's that, and I'm wondering, is this your fashion background where you have a distinct style and that's kind of what you're going for? And in this case, you want to find the clients who specifically match the style in which you deliver.
I think so. I think that's the ultimate goal. Of course, I want their perspective. I want to work with them. I'm a very collaborative person. So if they have a specific taste that they're not really if they're leaning more towards wabi-sabi than brutalism, or they're leaning more towards contemporary or modern, I will, of course, work with them. I'm not going to say no and say, okay, I'm only strictly brutalism. And I love it. For me, I love this style and taste, and I'll, of course, pitch the ideas and see how they feel about it. But I'm not going to force anything on a client. It's, in the end, I just want them to be at home and feel comfortable in their space. That's the ultimate goal to just achieve. And so I think fashion definitely had an influence on this for sure. From a fashion perspective, I always wanted to feel and look different. That was the one way I could stand out. And I think the reason why I started my jewelry line first was because I went to a Catholic school when I was younger and we had to wear uniforms. The only way I could stand out was through jewelry. I got a few detention slips from that because I would wear like crazy jewelry, like body chains and, fun armor on my hands. And I think through this and through heavy metal materials and doing different, using different things that you wouldn't normally see young girls wear, especially at a Catholic school. I think that also influenced the brutalism side of me of using these raw, rough materials in my projects now.
How did that translate into your preference when it comes to design and architecture?
Brutalism actually came later on for me. I never really knew about it until my brother. We have a very similar design style, but he introduced me to that architecture and this sense of style. And so I really latched onto that. And I was more of the wabi-sabi Japanese type of interior. I loved everything about bringing greenery into the home, using lime wash and very natural materials. And he was more of the rough, rugged symmetry, just shapes. Everything was very rough and hard. And so that combination kind of, I think, set my style and elevated. This was back in 2017 when I renovated his home. And that's when I figured out, wow, this is my combination. This is what I want to do and stick to.
It's interesting too, because in many cases, when it comes to design, brutalism is not really thought of as warm, welcoming, comfortable, and inviting. Wabi-sabi is, this practice of accepting the imperfections and finding the perfect in the imperfections. And when you put these two things together, it doesn't really
it doesn't really say warm, comfortable, and inviting. And one of the things that I love to do, and we're going to do this in a little bit, is look at some of your projects, and we'll talk about how this becomes what you want it to be, ultimately what your clients want it to be. I'm interested, though, your thoughts on this particular style, because it's not an overwhelmingly popular style currently. By putting yourself there, it seems like it gives you the opportunity, when you find clients who love this particular idea, it gives you an opportunity maybe to explore the space a little bit and kind of advance the ideas behind it.
Definitely. I don't think I've ever come across a client yet that loves brutalism. And when they read about it, like I have a client currently that really wanted to go towards the Danish perspective and more, it was like Scandinavian meets Japan style. So of course, I love as well, because there are some very natural elements, like, kind of lots of white oak. And then there's with the Japandi, there's just like weird shapes and lots of plaster and like unique forms. And for me, that matches perfectly. I think it's cool to have that juxtaposition. But when it comes to brutalism and wabi-sabi, I feel not many people are like, okay, I want my home to be brutalist, except for my brother, I was like, what's that? And yeah, we designed this couch that was just made out of plywood, and then we plastered over it, and that was the couch. And I was like, we need to put some cushion on this. Like, this needs to be a little bit comfortable. He's like, nah, it's fine. We could I can enjoy this. This is where I want to write my music. Okay. So, I think there's definitely some people out there that will love it, but it's just, like you said, it's not a popular style. And I hope more people are open to using this type of style in the future, because it really makes me so happy to have this. But of course, I also love to bring in warmth and coziness. So I bring that in with upholstery and pillows and paint, that set the environment so that it's not so cold feeling.
You are listening to my conversation with designer Elisa Baran. We'll be right back.
Design Hardware's newly remodeled showroom is where you will find a gallery-style space with a thoughtful display of products, purposefully positioned to allow unbridled exploration and discovery. High-end faucets, luxury tile, natural stone, wood floors, and bespoke hardware selections are presented in a holistic manner, strategically arranged to stimulate creativity and transition your vision from the conceptual stage to a fully realized space. Conveniently located, free parking available. Stop by to find your inspiration. Collect samples, get expert advice, and tackle everything on your shopping list all in one place. Visit them online at designhardware.com or in the real world, 6053 West 3rd Street in Los Angeles.
You also do that with space and shapes. And like I said, we'll get to that in a bit. But I've told this story before, but I'm curious. Did you ever see the movie Beetlejuice?
Yeah, of course.
With Michael Keaton?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Alec Baldwin's in that. So that was like my first experience. It's like the first memory I have of what the career of an interior designer was. That was my first experience watching that and seeing like Otho. It's like, oh, someone decorates a space. Like, I grew up in Southern California. I grew up in the Valley, right? Mm-hmm. And my house, when I was growing up in the 1970s, was your typical mid-century modern, rocks on the roof. You probably know exactly what I'm talking about. With the wallpaper that you could just sit there and pet all day because it was so fuzzy, and the stone fireplace. It was almost Flintstone-like. It really was. But when I saw that design from Beetlejuice, it kind of opened my eyes. It was impactful. Was there a moment for you, even after you started getting into this, where it's like, and I keep coming back to this because with your fashion and jewelry background, I can see in your work how it's representative. And, you're probably not going to be doing Scandinavian, totally see it, but something that's like frilly and maximalist. It's like, that's not going to be you. So was there a moment where it was like the light went on and you said, this is my style. This is how I want to move my design forward.
Yeah, like that was at my brother's house. When we designed it in 2017, that's where I realized I love this material. I love plaster and lime wash and rough materials, natural materials. That's when that pivot happened for me. Because before that, I was kind of trying to find exactly where I wanted to take each project, and every project had a different feel to it. I was adding color in the project previously to this. And then there was, a very Pinterest project, which is like my first project that I didn't know anything. and yeah, I was just exploring. I was trying to figure out what I loved. And I have to thank my brother and give him all credit to helping me out with this.
How do you find, because you have a specialty, how do you find new clients that want what you have?
I don't find them. They find me. It comes through, a lot of my clients come through Instagram or referrals. That's where most of the people, they'll message me and say, hey, we checked out your Instagram and we love your work. How does this work? How can we work together? And then, or it's a referral from a previous client that said they loved working with you. Let's do something together. So,
have you gotten any love from the trade publications?
Yes. So from a publication standpoint, Architectural Digest, like Pro, they always are asking, it's more interview questions. So I've gotten a lot of love through a recent project, Gentry in Studio City. That was a great one. It was just a bedroom design, but I think it just resonated with a lot of people because of the trendiness of the boucle and lime wash right now. And my client just really wanted this. And I'm trying to steer away from the trends, but it's hard when a client is like, this is what I want. And, it's difficult to steer them away from trends when this is what they're seeing all the time on Instagram, especially if they're influencers themselves. So I think, they try to copy a lot, which, it's hard to put in my own personal style with this, but they do allow me to do this towards the end when I'm styling at the end for my own portfolio, which is really nice. But in the end, it's their home again, in their room. And so,
talk to me about the challenges of working in a brutalist style, minimalist, as it relates to adding that styling and accessorizing at the end. Do you have a process for that?
I'm all about getting as much as possible into the space and then editing. So I will make sure we have as much material as possible on site because I don't want to be left without something if it's missing a certain piece or element in a space. And then I'll edit out. So I'll be a maximalist, then become a minimalist. And I find this works for me really well, just because I can see what it feels like cluttered. And then I'm like, okay, now we need to make this feel zen and feel like the client will be able to breathe when she comes into the room. And so that's my process, is just bringing as much in as possible and then editing out.
What about the personal effects? Because it's got to be a challenge too. Pictures of the kids, their work from school, it's got to be a challenge.
I haven't had clients that really want to show pictures, which is funny. I guess I'm lucky in a sense, because I don't even have a lot of pictures around the house. I'll have one or two that I really love from my wedding or, a family. But when it comes to clients, they don't really have a lot of pictures. And if they do, again, I will offer frame advice. and I'll, or, if they want to keep the frames or they want to keep pictures around their home, I'll edit it and make it look nice so that it's not overwhelmingly, full of pictures. But again, when it comes to my portfolio, I'll edit that out. That's not going in the portfolio. It has to be like what I've styled it as, because that's personal.
Do you have an idea in your mind about the evolution of brutalism, minimalism, warm and comfortable as it relates to your style? Like as you personalize this, do you have an idea in your mind as to sort of the evolution of the idea, of the concept?
Evolution as in like,
it's a poorly worded question, to be perfectly honest with you, but what I'm thinking about is, every time I have seen creatives who begin to specialize in a certain way, it's never about keeping it the same way and just replicating it and duplicating it. It's about like taking that idea and moving it forward and adding to it and subtracting from it to create something that is then new and different.
Oh yeah. I think it's hard to, like I said, clients keep coming back to that same style. They come to me for a reason. And so they see a project that I've done. They're like, oh, I want this. But of course they want some uniqueness too, which thankfully, I haven't worked on a project where all of the projects look exactly the same. When it comes to the color scheme, I'm sure you've noticed it has been the same, where it's like a lot of beige, a lot of cream, a lot of whites. Everybody wants that clean home right now. For evolution, I think I'm really trying to stray away from lime wash and boucle. This is just driving me a little crazy at the moment. So I'm trying to steer clients away from that and really push them into other forms of fabric that are like boucle, like more nubby fabrics that maybe are, like a wool that is a little more high end and from like Pierre Frey, something with a little more texture and color. It's hard to do because there's everything. Boucle is mass marketed. So people they have a budget and they want to stay on that budget. So I do put a lot of it in my projects just because that's what makes the clients happy. But it's hard to get them to move forward.
Yeah, well, and also because, boucle last year at Salone was the thing. It was one of maybe 5 the things, but it was everywhere. It was ubiquitous at Salone last year, and you really heard about it. And this year, not so much. I don't think it's a trendy thing. I think that it's one of those things that keeps coming back, and with what you do, it feels like it can continue in your design. But I get the idea that you want to change it up a little bit and do some new things. How does that relate to where product sourcing is right now? How are you sourcing? How are you finding new materials? How are you working with vendors? Are you finding things starting to loosen up a little bit?
Yeah. I for sourcing, I source all over. I'm online a lot, more so than in the design buildings. But when I do go out in the field, I'll go to all of the design buildings, Pacific Design Center, and I'll go shopping at Cravat and, pull a bunch of fabrics. And that's what I'll bring to my presentations and see what client gravitates towards. I think things are slowing down for the design centers because there's just so much available online and people love things just getting shipped to them easily. Like you have Material Bank where you could just order a bunch of fabrics and for free and it comes right to your door and makes it so simple. But there's a part of me that loves that brick and mortar where you just walk in and you can touch and feel things and be a part and experience how it feels in person. And lead times, of course, are still, they're not as bad as they were during the pandemic. They are still annoyingly long, but when it comes to custom things, but I'm more on the vintage end anyway. I love to source on First Dibs, Cherish, Facebook Marketplace. I love if the client is open to not doing something custom and brand new. and they're okay with having a vintage, historical piece in their home, which for me, I love when things have a story, then I'm all for it. And it also makes my life easier because then the product arrives that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And feel it.
Talk to me about that idea of the design center. So you are bi-coastal. So were you born and raised in is LA home or is New York home?
New York's home.
New York's home. Was LA home?
Yes. LA was home for 9 years. And then during the pandemic, I flew back to see my family before the pandemic hit and got stuck in New York.
Ah, okay.
Yes. And with this was during the time I was designing my brother's house and 2 other projects in LA. And so I was like, how am I going to get back there? I need to be on site. I need to make sure everything's going properly. I'd never left LA or like a project alone without being there. And it was a bit traumatizing because I was like, how am I going to handle this business in New York? And it worked out. And I realized I could do my work from New York and still have clients in LA. And that's what made me move back to New York fully and be closer to my family. And I still have my projects in LA. So I'm bi-coastal and I just go back and forth when I need to. And I have my projects in New York and it's been great. I just didn't know when that was going to happen. I knew I'd come back to New York at some point. COVID made it happen. So
how did that change your process?
It changed it to the point where now I do a lot of Zoom meetings. I am also part of Intro, which is a platform that allows any client to reach out to any designer or CEO of whatever they're looking for help with from a 15-minute, 30, 45, or an hour increment period. And they pay for that certain amount of time and they'll be able to upload questions prior to the meeting so that the designer can prepare for it. And then you have a full, I have a meeting in 15 minutes and I can give all of the information that the client needs in that 15 minutes, or they can extend their time. It's great. It's a great platform. And I realized that I can do this work from anywhere when it's small scale. But of course, if it's like a full build, I have to make my presence. I have to be on site.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And learning how to do this in real time out of necessity is just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's life in general, right? You figure it out because you have to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So jumping over to some of the projects that you've done, and again, I will say, because this is a podcast and because people are listening, I started doing this years ago, and one of the fun things that we're able to do, especially when doing this via Zoom, is if you're listening, if you're hiking Runyon Canyon or you're driving, don't do this. But if you have a chance to go sit in front of your computer and go to Elisa Baran, did I pronounce that correctly?
Baran.
Okay.
Yeah, there.
ElisaBaran.com. Go to portfolio, and you can follow the projects with us as we talk through them. It's so funny. That's one of the things that for me changed too with Zoom and doing these virtually. Being able to dive into some of these projects and really talk about them and talk through them has been so much fun. And I wanted to start with if you go to the show notes, there'll be a link to her website and you can follow along from there. L4F is a really interesting project. So this is a hospitality project. This is in New York?
Yeah, it's in Brooklyn.
It's in Brooklyn. So funny because it looks like it could be an apartment. It could be.
Well, it's a bakery in Brooklyn, and their whole concept during COVID was they sold pastries out of their apartment, l'appartement 4F, which is French for apartment. And they then opened up their brick and mortar store and their bakery in Cobble Hill. And yeah, so it is supposed to be an apartment. It's supposed to feel like an apartment, and they just sell their baked goods there.
Mission accomplished. No, it's perfect. And again, I think I picked this one first because this is the kind of the epitome of what I envision you're trying to accomplish. Like it is minimal, extremely minimal, but very comfortable. It is symmetrical and asymmetrical simultaneously. It is you've accomplished a lot here. What did you have to work with? What did you start with? And where did you go from there?
Well, it's funny because what you're looking at is actually the design that I pitched. It's the rendering.
Really?
Yes. And I owe that to Claudia, because this girl, Claudia Adamiak, I hope I'm pronouncing her last name right, but she is a renderer, and we worked together, and I gave her the whole concept designs, materials, layout, floor plan, and she then made it into the rendering. So this is actually just exactly what I envisioned and what I pitched the clients to move forward with the process, but they ended up going in a way more French direction, and that's not my style. So I put the rendering instead.
Interesting. So,
Yeah.
you know what? It's funny. I'm glad that you bring this up because with the rise of AI,
Mm-hmm.
renderings like this are going to be so much easier. And it's funny. It creates an issue too. And I haven't had this conversation yet, but at what point does the rendering become proof of concept versus an actual project itself? When you can get a rendering like this, I mean, down to the pastry, right?
Yeah.
When you look at this is from the space, scale, sizing, I mean, everything that's there looks proportional.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, to the point where, so I work with her on every project because I really want the clients to feel exactly how their space should feel and how I would design it. And so I get down to the nitty gritty with those, like with this, I put in the exact pastries that they would be using. And I put in exactly the upholstery that we were pulling. And I sent her all the details. And it does become complicated, especially from a paint perspective, because you're not going to get that exact color for paint on the first try, because that changes due to light, due to direction. I give Claudia the direction of the home and the way the light comes in, so she can try to match it as much as possible. But the clients to be like, how do we get this color paint? And I'll be like, oh, well, that's a rendering. So that's not going to look exactly like this paint that we spec'd here, even though they say that it's the exact paint. It all depends on the way the lighting hits your walls and at what time of day. So I think that's the most challenging part when it comes to AI, just renderings in general, is colors, because those change in every project, in every home, the way the lighting hits it.
Well, what's interesting too is, when it comes to AI and rendering, like it's something off of Midjourney or one of the other sources that you can use, the prompts are the most important part, like how you prompt it to come up with what you want the end result to be. And I don't know if you work in this at all, but the reason it never even dawned on me that this was a rendering was because there's shadows. There's actual shadow from the light fixtures. If you look at the first image, this is fascinating to me because I'm in the process of going through a course. I'm taking a course through MIT. It's a no-code AI and machine learning course. So
Wow.
I've been going deep in this. I've been doing it now for about a month and a half, 2 months, and it's really fascinating what the potential is, and how it's going to change design. I think that if anything is going to change design, it's going to be something like this. Like, this is fascinating to me, and I have to imagine it dramatically changes the way you do business.
Definitely. I love, whenever I show these renderings to clients, they're blown away. They're like, wait, that's our space. That's what we wanted it to look like. This isn't real. Like, no, your project's not done yet. Your house isn't finished, but this is what it's going to look like. And we're going to get it as close to this as possible.
That's fascinating. What's also really interesting about this is you can get, it feels like you can solve so many problems through a project like this. Now, this is, you worked with a person, so you still had to work with an artist who crafted this. This wasn't created automatically based on some, a bag of words.
No, I wish.
Yeah.
That would make life a lot easier. I'm actually working with somebody she's in Amsterdam. So there's time changes, there's difficulties to getting this right. And it takes months to get to this point.
Yeah, but it's just fascinating to me because if you look at for example, if you look at the bathroom and I'm looking at the mirror and I'm looking at light fixtures that are reflecting off of the mirror, they look like they're where they're supposed to be. The reflections look like where they're supposed to be, which is just fascinating to me. Okay, so if we went to Syosset, which was the next one, and again, completely representative of what you're looking for. There's even, believe it or not, there's even some color in this one, which walk me through this space. Yeah, walk me through this.
So this was a single family residence in Syosset that actually had very low ceilings, very low, to the point where when you walked in, you felt like claustrophobic. There was no light whatsoever coming through the windows. It was very hard to, it felt very dismal. And my vision immediately was like, we got to open this space up. How can we do it? And when I got up to the second floor, I saw this small attic space that was not used for anything other than a playroom for the kids that had lived there. And I was like, all right, this attic's coming out. It's no longer an attic. We're going to open up this ceiling. And that's what changed it. It was a game changer for the project.
Now, is this one real or is this one?
This is real.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's funny because there's a bathroom again, and I'm looking at the mirror and it looks like the mirror is bent. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. But it's interesting. It creates a real issue. Like it's a fantastic tool. So with a project like this, do you render it in advance and then go off of that in the design?
So actually, if you go to Circle, this was the first initial concept, and we ended up, the budget was way too high for the client. So we had to change the whole thing. But this was the initial concept, the Circle Drive. This is a render.
Okay. So, all right. So listen, I am totally digging this, and I will tell you why. This is going to be fun. I've never had a chance to do this before. I've never had a chance to look at a rendering versus the final project where it looks like both are actually the final project.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to me. So the first thing that strikes me is, and I got to jump back and forth, but the first thing that strikes me is, let's talk about the kitchen for a second, because this one, it looks like you're opening walls and you're taking the ceiling up and you're doing a lot of architectural, rather structural work to the space. And as we look at the actual project, that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. But what does seem to happen is, looking back at the kitchen again, it's representative of what you were trying to accomplish there. So take me through the process of showing a client the rendering, presenting them with the budget, and then saying, okay, well, that's not going to work, but winding up with this, which is still, it feels as cozy. It is definitely in the same style. It seems like, I'm just thinking through this. It's from the business side of it. It seems like it helps you blend the business side with the artistry. Yeah,
I think so. How this happened was we met with an architect and we gave her dream space with this architect. And we just were like, let's do this, let's do that, without even talking about how much these elements were gonna cost, because she didn't have a budget at first. So we went all in. And then when we realized how long the lead times were going to be for such doors and windows, and how expensive the material, like getting cranes in to like lift all of this, it just became, and the permitting process, it just became a nightmare, and we wanted things done quickly. So I had the renderings. I showed her and she fell in love with them. And it was very hard to get her mind off of that rendering the entire project. But I was like, we can still achieve this look by cutting out, these gorgeous steel doors that bifold. We could still achieve it by just having a cute coffee nook and having a lot of open light. And we ended up keeping the original doors and windows because it just saved money, and went with more expensive materials like travertine and marbles to elevate the space. And hardwood flooring, engineered hardwood flooring, that was a little bit more expensive. But yeah, so I had to try and get that exact space without actually spending the budget that was initially planned. That wasn't actually there. The budget was never there, but she wanted to see what it could look like.
So with the flooring, did you go with it? You still replaced the floor, but why didn't you go with the original lighter herringbone?
Too expensive, and the lead time was just crazy. Yeah, lead times were nuts.
In Circle, when you enter, there's an application that you use. It looks like with the scalloped piece that's over what is that? And what was the idea there?
Barrel ceiling, they call it.
Okay.
And the big New York thing, actually, if you go into any subway, you see barrel ceilings. And there are a few apartments actually for sale now that I went into to just go look at in West Village that are starting to expose. They're taking down the drywall from the ceiling, and they're exposing barrel ceilings. And it's beautiful. And so I grabbed inspiration from the subways and brought that to that entry. And I wanted to pair that with limestone flooring at the entry as well. But this architecture in this space ended up being too costly with the limestone that was spec'd at Eco Outdoor. It was like a reclaimed limestone, expensive material that she initially thought that she was going to move forward with, but then was like, okay, I'm getting too out of hand here. Let's cut back. How can we make this work?
It's fun too. One of my favorite features in this project is, and it's so funny because now I'm like, am I looking at the real one or am I looking at the rendering? The banquette, was that there or did you add that in?
I added that in. So this was a closed off kitchen completely. Like it had a L-shaped kitchen with a very unnecessary wall blocking the kitchen that blocked all the light. It was very claustrophobic, no banquette at all. And I was like, this space is calling for something cozy and a breakfast nook. And this client loved to read in the morning and have her breakfast. And I'm like, this is your space. Like, this is what's going to make you happy.
Yeah, I get that. Okay. So, Gentry, is that your brother's house?
No, this is,
Okay.
This is a client, the Studio City client I mentioned earlier.
So, and I will end with this one. Love this. Is it real or a rendering?
It's the Gentry. This is real. Yeah. Cause I did
confusing.
I did a rendering for her, but I didn't put this on my website. I just posted the reel.
And it's funny too, because I really do love that as a tool, because it seems like you can do so much with it. But this is this bedroom I feel like is prototypical for what you're trying to accomplish. Fair?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, it was a bit challenging for me because she was more contemporary. She liked this more so than brutalism and wabi-sabi feeling, but I pushed her towards, she wanted everything to be very light and bright. That was a big part. And she also loved grays, which I generally steer away from unless it's in board form, material or concrete. So yeah, it was a challenging project because I gave her tons of renderings because I wanted her to do a specific thing, and we changed it multiple times and we ended up with this, which I love the result. But she's a makeup influencer on YouTube. So she needed a really cool mirror. You could see it in the picture that was custom, that was backlit, that, gave nice light for her YouTube videos. But yeah, I would say this is very close to my style, because in the end, I got to style it before taking the photos.
I think it's funny too. I think it's funny too. You said that you're not working with gray, but gray is the official color of brutalism.
I know. It's funny. It's because I love concrete, like I said, and if I could live anywhere, it'd be in a warehouse with very old, like 70s or 80s furniture that is upholstered, cozy, but the warehouse is very brutalist and cold and with like steel doors and windows. So I love this type of gray, but when it comes to gray paint, like flat gray paint, I don't love. But this is what she wanted initially.
Talk to me about the shop. It's interesting because I'm feeling like you also have a highly curated, I don't feel like it, I'm looking at it. You have this highly curated store on your site too. And is that kind of like your entry into something greater?
I started this during COVID, and it was a side project. I was trying to get out of the house and meet people. And so I would meet people on Facebook Marketplace that were local. And I also needed to fill up my projects quickly. And I didn't want to wait for the lead time. So I would be like, okay, I need a marble end table. Let me source on Facebook Marketplace who's local. I need this now. And I would find them and buy them. And if it didn't work out for the project, I just started putting it on my shop. And that's how that started. And I kind of put it on halt after my projects started picking up again. But I do love to source, and I love to create custom pieces as well. And eventually I'll pick that back up. But I just am not in love with the whole packing process and shipping process. So I'm more of the sourcing, let's style it in the home project. So now I just have like a bunch of stuff that I picked up and eventually will put on the shop, but not yet.
That's awesome. It's interesting too, because when speaking with designers, knowing that a line is always something that designers have either in the back of their minds or they want to do right now. But also in talking to so many creatives, there's always like, well, I would do a line if I knew what I wanted to do, but I don't really know what I want to do because they don't have a signature style of their own, or, they're more, opaque in what they want because they want to mirror what their clients want. Because you're so clear with your own aesthetic, your own style, what you want, do you now start thinking about lines and partnerships and collaborations? And if so, do you have any yet, or are you starting to work on those?
Yeah, I've a lot of collaborations that are in the works. They just haven't come out yet because it takes a lot of time. It takes like 2 years to get these things going. But one that is coming out this year is with Art and Loom. It's a Miami-based rug company, and we have a custom brutalist collection coming out. And rugs and brutalism doesn't really go together, but you'll see once it comes out that there's a lot of symmetry and geometry, and it's fun. It will be coming out in June 22nd. That's the launch date.
That's awesome. It's funny too. And by the way, by the time folks hear this, we will be past the launch date. So where will that be available?
On their website, artandloom.com.
Okay.
They're doing a full renovation of their website right now. So if they don't change that, artandloom.com, that's what it is.
Isn't it funny too? Like if you ever walk through Target, you will start to see brutalist accessories, like the prototypical ball with the spikes. Mm-hmm. You will see that at Target. Does that surprise you?
No, I don't think so. I'll sometimes even go to Target and, if I just need something very quickly, home goods, Target, something very quickly for a project to style, that's going to be like hit it in the back, like not, you can't really tell if it's made mass produced. Then yeah, I'll do that. But no, it doesn't surprise me when I see that, because everything eventually is a knockoff, right? Like it all comes full circle, unfortunately. But yeah, that's why I tried to source more vintage than go mass produced, because then at least I'm getting something unique.
Love it. Love it. This is great. Elisa, this was so great. Thank you for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation, Josh.
Likewise, me too.
We are living at a time of incredible growth, both technologically and creatively, with respect to interior design, exterior design, and architecture. There is no question. There are companies thinking differently about the business of design and how to make products super serve those for whom they're being made. One of those companies, and one of my favorites, is Moya Living. Designer and fabricators of some of the most stunningly beautiful, incredibly durable, and highly functional kitchen, bath, and outdoor kitchen cabinetry on the market today. Powder-coated steel with stunning lines, vibrant colors to fit any design style or aesthetic. A history of designing cabinetry for the scientific community, so you know it's been tested in some of the truly the most harsh conditions available. Moya O'Neill is the CEO and founder of Moya Living. She's the inspiration behind the design. Designers, their specification process is so simple, it will make your job so much easier. Check them out online through the socials at Moya Living, their website, moyaliving.com, and in the real world, their live kitchen showroom in Fountain Valley, California.
Thank you, Elisa. I am so happy we finally met and had the opportunity to talk. Thank you for taking the time to share your story, and thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you to my partners and sponsors, Thermosol, Moya Living, and Design Hardware, for your partnership and support. And thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the show. I hope this always allows you to think about things, specifically design, in new ways. As we put a bow on 2023, there are a few things you should know. I have some really fun, productive, and exciting new programming for you in 2024. Gosh, where to start? It includes the Design Messengers, a brand new Monday episode that will cover issues, news, developments, and ideas for you to grow your design business. As an aside, so you can understand the perspective where this is coming from, I stopped really covering the business of design a few years ago, as there was this flood of new podcasts that were covering the business of home and design. That's not what the Design Messengers is. Instead of business tips, this is going to be a synopsized, high-level view of new concepts, economic developments, technological advancements, and other ideas that I think will help you launch into your week. I hope it does anyway. These episodes will drop on select Mondays, sometimes every Monday, sometimes not. But as long as you are subscribing to the podcast, you'll receive them automatically in your feed. I will also be publishing a new series called West Edge Wednesday. These will feature the conversations that took place live from the West Edge Design Fair in Santa Monica, California in November of 2023. If you missed the show, you can hear all the talks as if you were there in person. That's my hope. I also have 2 new additional series that will be published to the feed. Throwback Thursdays, a Hall of Fame version featuring some of your favorite design talent that have appeared on the show over the past 11 years. And Drinking About Design, a Friday series where I get together virtually with fun and amazing design and architecture talent, and we uncover stories from the world of design while getting a little loose. I think you are going to really love these. And hey, if you are so inclined, plan on listening to the show on a Friday afternoon with a pop or two of your own. It'll be a thing. Please keep those emails coming, convobydesign@outlook.com, with show suggestions, guest ideas, or just to say hello. I love them. I really do. Thanks again. And until next week, be well and take today first.